2020 briefing and question and answer session. It's been a long time since we have provided a comprehensive overview about our work in progress, as well as showcased the project partners who've been working with us over the last couple of years on the applications of some of the different technologies we've been developing. It's also an opportunity for us to describe the next 12 to 18 months roadmap for the project and its project partners across the world, and hopefully provide some pathways for each and every one of you to think about how you can make use of the infrastructure that we have built, how you can develop projects that utilizes the blockchain capabilities that have now come out of the work we've been doing, and hopefully grow your businesses as well as grow the overall ecosystem in general. So look, today is going to be probably about 90 minutes. And whilst it appears to be quite a long period of time, I hope that by breaking it down into 5 main sections, it will be quite manageable and tolerable for each of you. The 5 sections basically will see me bookend the presentations from everyone else with some context and some background as part of part 1, which will lay the ground for an introduction and an overview from Charles Morris, one of the project directors on the current technologies, before moving into some showcases, and then loop back around for a roadmap wrap up and a description of some of the collaboration models and the plan going forward. So that's roughly the order of the day, 4 sessions of about 15 minutes each, and then open up for about half an hour, 25 minutes or so of questions and answers. The other thing you can do is email questions that we can follow up with later on. And I think in the email invitations, the email address had wpowell@smarttradenetworks.com. That's a bit long-winded and it won't actually get to me. So I'd suggest you change that to wp@smarttradenetworks.com. So if you've got any email questions to send through, feel free to send them through there as well. So look, I'll get started straight away and just give you an overview of what Smart Trade Networks is, what we've been working on, some of the design parameters that sits behind what we do, and then pass it on to Charles. The project has been going since, in essence, since about 2017. And we began our project really with a use case in the red meat industry, focusing very much on how to design and apply distributed ledger technologies to tracking and tracing red meat, particularly from an exports point of view, to facilitate product integrity and ultimately streamline cross-border payments. As we undertook that research work together with partners at Queensland University of Technology, we were able to develop some technologies to apply more generally into other supply chain systems, which I'll come to in a moment, but also become very clear in our minds as to what our wholesale infrastructure technology purpose ultimately is. And our purposes really boil down to a handful of key propositions. And this is what drives what we do each and every day in terms of both our technology design and development roadmap, as well as our commercialization and partnerships roadmap. Our core principal objective is to deliver systems and technologies that support data integrity in supply chains. And that's probably the anchor point for all of us. So projects that align with that primary purpose are ones that we immediately feel an affinity with and believe that we can bring some value to the table. Projects that are not aligned to these purposes will tend to fall by the wayside, whether or not those projects have other merits or not. But this is really, I guess, a way that we use to anchor our work and our priorities. Out of that, what we're trying to do is build a technical infrastructure that can produce, verify, and maintain a body of common knowledge or a foundation of information that people in supply chain systems globally need to use and share with each other to be able to go about doing the business that they do with each other with a level of confidence. And that objective comes out of the concerns that we observed in our own work in cross-border meat supply chains, where information asymmetry between the different players within the supply chain caused considerable doubt around the authenticity and the credibility of the data. And that ultimately led to both discounting on a price point perspective and a value distribution perspective, and also delays in products moving and getting where they needed to get to, as well as delays in payment circuits being completed. So doubt driving discounts and delays was a key concern for us. Our third driving purpose is to empower people to understand and make use of these technologies. There's not much point with us sitting here in our research lab doing all of this amazing work and keeping it all to ourselves. The aim ultimately is to enable communities of supply chains around the world to take advantage of these technologies and these learnings to become more trustworthy, more authentic, and ultimately drive more sustainability in supply chains and their communities. Because we do a lot of work out of R&D with universities and believe that there is an important role for university-based research to anchor leading-edge commercialization, we remain committed to research and development and the partnerships that we've established with university researchers that we hope to continue to expand. And I'll touch on that in the closing section of today's presentation. And ultimately, I guess there is a high order ethos, if you will, around what Smart Trade Networks is striving to accomplish, and that is to focus on the activities that we believe contribute to enhancing the health of the planet, the health of communities, and ultimately the health of people. So that's our driving purpose. Now, to make all of that happen over the last few years, and possibly because of the constraints on travel with COVID, we've actually developed a global network and a global ecosystem of partners, some of which are subsidiary or joint venture companies, as well as partnerships that we have with all sorts of specialists around the world. The anchor features of this ecosystem is essentially around four core corporate entities, if you will. There is an R&D and an intellectual property owning entity, which is anchored here in Australia, which is SCP Capital. For those of you who are interested in the sort of more prosaic corporate side of things, we have an operations company registered in Hong Kong, which will increasingly become the focus of our global commercialization work. We have a national company partnership in South Africa revolving around a joint venture company there called Data Ledger. And we also have a national company partnership with a joint venture company in North America called Beef Ledger Incorporated, or Beef Ledger Inc., which is registered in Delaware. And that's the focal point for some of the projects that are happening now in both North America and South America. The human beings behind these corporate entities, I think, is actually the most interesting feature because it really shows the breadth of industry knowledge and expertise and experience that we are harnessing and mobilizing. So across those four core entities, this group of people that appears on screen, we'll share this slide deck later with all of you, really starts to describe the personnel that are mobilizing around these core technologies and ideas. I won't bore you with the individual details. Suffice to say that you have people who bring decades of experience in financial services, in agricultural systems, in software development, in financial services, in very particular supply chain environments, whether it's wine or beef or whatever, to the table to grow out the applications of these technologies into a broad range of global ecosystems. In addition to this core team, we also have a whole network of industry specialists through joint ventures and partnerships, some of whom are here today, and some will showcase some of the work that we're doing. Again, we work with industry specialists and product and partner development colleagues to dream up, if you will, new ways of using these technologies to embed distributed ledger capabilities in supply chains, ultimately to achieve the objectives that we have set ourselves, which I outlined earlier. The technology development has been anchored by some amazingly talented and creative software developers, Tom Miller, who many of you know, Santiago de Valle, and Barry Earsman, who has been quite instrumental in developing some of the smart contracts that we've developed and deployed on our blockchains. We also have some fantastic research partners in Australian universities. The global footprint, as I mentioned earlier, really extends across many continents now. And I think at last count, we extend across 16 or 17 different countries. This map just gives you a feel for where we are. And many of the projects that I've identified here in this map really focuses on some of the food systems that we're working on, but we're doing work outside of food systems as well, whether it's in educational certification, working with eco-packaging service providers and technology providers, all the way through to property fractionalisation in South Africa. You'll start to see how this foundational infrastructure that we've developed is starting to gain traction across a diverse range of supply chains, where integrity has been a challenge or a problem over the years, and where the solutions that we're bringing to the table are starting to transform those supply chains for the better. Our core technology is anchored by the research and development that we've done in partnership with Queensland University of Technology, where I've had the privilege of being an adjunct professor for a number of years, and where as a result of that, I get to work with some amazing researchers, cutting across legal, technical, social science, economics, behavioural sciences, and all those sorts of spaces. And by being able to harness those resources, I think we've been able to create something that's incredibly robust and also very leading edge and practical at the same time. We also benefit from some fantastic project collaborations with Edith Cowan University, and Professor Kerry Brown's on the call today. And we've been doing some really interesting work there, and Ross Honeyman will describe some of that a bit later on. And we've also been working with some colleagues at University of South Australia, particularly around the bush tucker space. Now, bush tucker is a very important emergent product category, particularly for the social and ecological impact dimensions of supply chains. And in recent times, we've had the privilege of working on some projects in that arena. We're also award winners, so I'm very pleased to be leading a team that has gained recognition amongst some of Australia's leading designers. So we've won 2 Australian Good Design Awards, and we've been a finalist in the Australian Computer Society's Disruptor of the Year Awards as well. So we've got some great research driven innovations coming out of our research laboratories, and this product is really starting to hit the ground now. Just very quickly before I pass it on to Charles, who'll actually walk through with you some of the more practical dimensions of what we've done, just to give you a feel for how the intellectual property stack works, because it's a question that we're often asked, is that we literally have developed a blockchain ecosystem that has a number of layers. And those layers enable us to maintain a cornerstone of intellectual property, and then from there build out what is essentially collaborative intellectual property around specific applications. So think of it as like a process of bricolage or building an ecosystem with Lego blocks. We have developed a range of standardized Lego blocks that people can use repeatedly for their own projects. And we encourage people to also develop particular Lego blocks, if you will, that can be plugged into the ecosystem and used by others. We've done all of this work ultimately with a view to enabling this infrastructure to scale. As I mentioned earlier, we started this journey focused on one particular category, ultimately with a view to extending out from there. And we do that by operating within what we call a resource, events and agents supply chain schema. And that enables us to develop applications and software technologies that are universal and grounded in robust R&D. So the REA schema is the means by which we can account for the variations in real life supply chains at a particular level of technical abstraction, so that we can design abstracted functional tools that we can apply in different circumstances. We then add that together with what's called a value flow schema, which really is a way of describing all the different ways in which resources can be accounted for in supply chains, and how the management and use of those through work processes can be accounted for in an informational sense, and it allows us to ultimately have a standardized infrastructure that we can customize for particular application cases and leverage to reach into many kinds of supply chain systems. And we do that ultimately by an architecture that has three main layers. The foundational layer is the blockchain itself, which is, for those who are technically minded, an Ethereum virtual machine compatible blockchain. So people who do development work using Solidity will be very familiar with being able to develop within this particular ecosystem. The consensus mechanism is a proof of authority mechanism, which enables us to deliver a couple of interesting attributes. And they are, firstly, that we are able to meet regulatory obligations around the world in terms of identifying the node operators of this particular distributed network, and also deliver a very stabilized cost environment for supply chain users. So that's why we went down this path, was to be able to meet regulatory obligations and also deliver commercially necessary price stabilization. On top of that, as a result of the REA schema, we have also developed a whole suite of smart contracts. And smart contracts really are functional machines, if you will, where particular inputs drive very specified outputs in a consistent manner. If this, then that is a really nice way of thinking about what smart contracts are. And we are able to activate those smart contracts. I will try to do the full screen. Let me know, I'm just going to blow this up and let me know if it doesn't transition from screen to screen, please, Steve. Let's see if this works. I'm about to transition from this building block screen to a pipeline screen. Is that coming through? Can you see that? Did it change screen?
No.
Okay.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. I just couldn't read the little text. That's fine. Carry on.
Oh, that's okay, Steve.
Hang on. It's doing something.
Neither can I.
No. Okay, no problem.
So, as I said, we'll share the deck anyway with everybody, and a lot of these diagrams, when you blow them up, you'll be able to see them. Now, we do have a bunch of things happening in the pipeline, and some of that will be touched on with some of the showcases. But I just want to give you a feel that on the back of this infrastructure, we're now punching into certification, document verification, a range of health applications, insurance applications, and those sorts of things as well with project partners. So by building this layer of foundational building blocks, if you will, we're now in a position to rapidly scale with industry partners who are specialists in both their industries and in the product knowledge areas that we need to, again, meet fitness for market or market match, and also regulatory compliance in different jurisdictions. I might leave it at that. I've tried to punch through pretty fast. I guess the short summary of all of that is that over the last 4 years, we've done a very large amount of work building technical foundation stones. We've deployed many, many projects in the real world to test out the robustness and the application of these foundational technologies. And now, over the last 6 months or so, we've been progressively commercializing these tools, or a particular set of tools, into the supply chain context. And I'll just pass it on to Charles now, who will walk through with you where some of those tools are. Screen.
Thanks, Warwick. Afternoon, everybody. Pleasure to be here. So I think Warwick's given us a good overview of stuff that's going on, where we're at with structures and technology. What I'd like to talk about briefly, now we've got this technology, sort of, so what? Because it's all well and good developing something. And our mantra really has been to track, trace and trade. And the three parts of that, I find them, it's interesting what people think about it and what use they think it can be. And I'm more on the commercial side rather than the development side. So for me, tracking and tracing by itself, look, it's great. It serves a purpose. And it's really a nice to have, not necessarily a must have for most businesses. The trade part is the bit that I find is the thing that we've got to really focus on. And you know, that's the purpose of all of the work has brought us to this point. We can now trade using the tools that have been developed. And I think that's the key thing to bear in mind as I go through these next set of slides, just to give you an idea of what this now means in the real world. We've done some great development, but we've got to implement that to make a difference. So let's go back to the track and trace and what's the purpose. So for buyers, they really want to know that they're getting the actual product. Goes without saying, and it's not really asking a lot. If I try and buy something, I want to make sure that this is what I'm getting. Same for sellers. Sellers, they want to know they're going to get paid. So the important thing for them, if your paperwork's in order, your goods can move and the funds can come back to you. It sounds pretty obvious, but these are key things that are hold-ups in general trade. The other important person in trading is a regulator. Around the globe, they've all got the same agenda. They just want to be able to tick the boxes. So by us providing documentation that's easy, it suits what they want to see. If they need to see something is compliant, it's got the right documentation, it's got insurance, it's got certificates, we can enable them to see those things. That will make their job better, and that'll be a benefit for all of us. And the last one that we find, well, I particularly find most interesting, seeing as I've got a finance background, is finance and insurance. For me, better visibility equals less risk. Stating the obvious, but it's actually what's priced into the transactions that we do. Every transaction we make has these things built into it. If we can make, for finances, the risk lower, we can expect that the costs are going to be passed on. And if the costs aren't passed on, then we need to ask why. So these, perhaps that gives you a little bit of perspective around what the technology is. Sorry, just letting some more people in. And you know, our focus on it has been technology development, but now at the stage of implementation. Okay, so let's look at some business cases. So for me, talking to people, the thought of digitalising often is pretty daunting for businesses. Everybody's got their systems already in place. To get people to change, it's a task. And I'm as lazy as the next person. You know, if somebody comes up with a new platform for us to collaborate on or to do something, you know, it's got to be a good reason. I need an incentive to do that. If it's not making my life easier, it's unlikely I'm going to really adopt it and stick with it. So we've got to make the transition easy. Two main drivers really I find in business. I'll change if it's a compliance need. If I have to change, there's a reason I've got to do that. And if that allows me to enter new markets by being compliant in that marketplace, that's a good reason. The other obvious one is for commercial reasons. If it's commercially viable and encouraging for me to adopt this technology, I'm going to look at it. If my business is going to work quicker, faster, more profitably, there's a good reason to put in the time and effort to change. The obvious one that we all can probably relate to is when you change banks. You know, it's a complete drama. You've got to do all the documentation again. You're trying to refinance something. It's a lot of effort. So the only reason we're going to do that is because it's viable to do so. We're going to get a better deal. We're going to get a win out of doing that. And adopting new technologies have to have the same result. If we're not benefiting, or if what we're offering doesn't allow a business to benefit, it's unlikely that we're going to bother doing it. So let me show you some of the tools that we've got. There's a few variations, all on the same theme. The underlying technology powers all of these tools. But as as we all know, there's tools for certain jobs. So I'll go through some of those just to enlighten you for those that aren't up to speed on what we've got. The first one I'll talk to you about is the asset tracker. It literally does what it says on the tin. It tracks assets. It doesn't take too much to understand that. But the key thing is we've made it simple. We've made this similar to filling in any online form. That's allowing you to register assets. Those assets then will have an identity, and we can build a history and add data to those assets to build the provenance story or to show the compliance. Whatever we need to do, it all starts from this point. If the asset isn't registered on the blockchain, we can't verify anything about it. So pretty obvious, this is where we start. For those that are a little bit more technical, once an asset is registered, we can then create an NFT of that asset. Some of you might prefer this to be called a distributed digital certificate to take it away from the thought of it being anything to do with crypto. And we get that. That makes a lot of sense. But that NFT or the digital certificate can then be used to prove ownership, can be transferable. There's a different, a range of different things we can do with this, and happy to explore those with everybody's type of business to see how that can fit in. If you like the sound of that, this one you'll love. This is the free version of that. So there's no excuses. It's for free. You can download it, Android or Apple, and have a play with it. You can't hurt yourself with it. You can't hurt us with it. It's really, really simple. It works on the mobile phone. What it does, it allows you to use an existing photo or take a photo and upload it directly into the blockchain. You can then go back and view it through our asset view. This, for me, is the educational tool that will allow all of us, not just our business, but everybody, to learn how to start interacting, working towards Web3 transactions. There is really no excuse not for everybody to play with this tool. Show it to your kids, show it to your grandkids. Everyone can do it. I can't emphasize enough how easy this is. The example you'll see on the screen is from an art exhibition we registered all of the assets for that was in Sydney in October. I was shared all of the images, registered them literally while I was on a train from the Gold Coast to Brisbane. That's how easy this is to use. There's no excuses. Third one, consumer impact. So we talk about engaging with people better. If we can engage with end consumers, they will then drive change in industry regardless, because if a consumer demands it, that goes back to that commercial question we were talking about earlier. If the consumer wants it, the producers will provide it because they'll get paid to do that. So this is very simple. We spoke earlier about registering assets. This is how we view assets. And if I'm a company, so the example on the screen is a winery. If I'm a company and I've got a great story to tell about my product, here's how I can showcase it with a client. This can be as simple as a QR code on product that you scan with your mobile phone. So you don't need to download any apps. Scan it straight from your camera. It will take you to this place. You'll see it, you can explore, you can verify the block number. And there's other features we're building into this. So you'll be able to click through to a marketplace and buy these products as well. So for me, this rounds out registering an asset to consumers be able to engage with the asset and then be able to buy the asset. That comes back to our track, trace and trade proposition. We've registered the asset. We're now showing the details about the asset. That's going to lead to somebody being able to purchase and trade that asset. Sorry, just letting more people in. Okay, This one is far more technical, and I'm going to get Warwick to explain this one. This is our multi-sig governance tool. But by the end of this slide, you're all going to be far more aware of what we can and can't do with it. Over to you.
Yeah, look, thanks again, Charles. One of the projects that we've been very interested in is how communities of people ultimately are able to use these technologies to better govern resources that they have a common interest in. And at root, it means using digital tools to support collective decision-making. The primitive, if you will, that enables this to happen is what we call our multi-sig governance tool. And it is deployed, in this case, on the Polygon public network, and is a tool that will be available to anybody who wants to build new communities of interest around common resources. In many ways, think of it as one of the foundational pieces to the emergence of and operationalization of so-called DAOs, distributed autonomous organizations. They're all the rage at the moment in the distributed blockchain space, but in many ways, they're also harking back to all sorts of ways in which groups of human beings have historically collaborated around things that they have in common, such as associations, guilds, co-ops and mutuals. So the multi-sig governance platform enables groups to form. It enables groups to decide on who else can come into the group. It can remove group members as well, of course. It can decide on what the decision-making thresholds are in those groups, whether it's just one decision maker of a group is required, or whether it's two of so many, or three, or five, or whatever it happens to be. And it is entirely organic. And the aim of this is to deliver a tool that groups of people are able to use to bring people together, to engage with each other around resources that they care about, and to become accountable to each other in the ways that they want to make decisions about common resources. We've connected it up with a token minting contract on the blockchain, and that enables groups to begin to account for the contributions that different members are making to things as well. So it's a very, very flexible technical primitive, if you will, and it's one that will encourage people in the new year to really explore as part of 21st century collaborative social organisation. I might pass it back to Charles now, who'll keep us all organised and on track in terms of the showcasing. There's a couple that I'll present on behalf of our team in South Africa who can't make it with us today, courtesy of load shedding, but back to Charles for now.
So what I'd like to do now is talk about some of the projects that are using this technology. Some are in development, some are commercial, and some are still in discussions as to how best to position it. First person I'd like to speak is Kangol Lin. Kangol, are you online?
Yes, I'm online.
Okay, good boy. Okay, you've got 2 minutes. Off you go.
Thank you so much, Charles. Thank you so much, Warwick. Hi, everyone. My name is Kangol, the CEO of Digital Record. When the consumers can't tell the authenticity of a merchandise, such as a Louis Vuitton, they run the risk of being scammed, which is very common. Human capital and human credentials are just like merchandises. The customer who run the risk here could be the employers. Today, credential fraud has become a multi-billion-dollar problem globally. At Digital Record, we're making all the educational credentials instantly verifiable by putting them onto the blockchain. Today, we're working with a number of educational institutions as well as micro certificate providers. We're actively looking to onboard more educational partners globally. So feel free to reach out to us or STN if you think we can supercharge your educational initiative by making all the certificates instantly verifiable. Got a call today to verify? instantly verifiable tomorrow.
Thank you, Kangal. Very good. So just to reiterate, you're doing certificate on the blockchain, and how do you think that's going to help people?
So globally, credential fraud has become a very common problem. It has become a problem that is causing a lot of employers, a lot of people who are really verifying these credentials, a lot of trouble, a lot of money. Today, if we want to verify a credential, we have to call the source, or we have to trouble to some of the third parties to be able to verify some of the credentials. And sometimes you can't verify some of the credentials. And what we're building here today is that we want to make it instantly verifiable so that people, in this case, the employers or the people who are verifying a certain piece of credential to make a very important decision will not be scammed.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Great summary. And if anybody would like to know more, please feel free to reach out to Kangal or myself. We'd love to talk about this. Next person up, Ross Honeyman. Ross, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Away you go, Ross. 2 minutes is all yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name is Ross Honeyman. The company that we operate is CRC Mutual Limited, and there are some other affiliated assets which are infrastructure around that we've developed for next generation funds, asset and vendor finance management. We're working very closely with ECU, as Warwick mentioned earlier, and we've just been through a first phase of research and development, and we're moving to an industrial deployment phase early next year. The objective of our research with the university has been to optimise our regional SME resilience and employment workflow, and we're doing that by the customer-led or DIY re-engineering of the financial planning and advisory services supply chains that are currently disrupted here in Australia at the moment due to some regulatory requirements that make the supply chains very, very arduous and difficult to operate and manage. We've actually created CRC Mutual as a treasury that it's called Mutual because it will be fractionally owned by all users and operators as a cross-regional and essential supply chain participants. As CRC partners, we're engaging as cross-regional members of families and SME service networks, and we're harnessing the peer-to-peer technologies, open source, AI, and of course the smart contracted technology security. But with that, we're also looking at sustainable global consolidation efficiencies that drive impact-motivated ESG, environmental, social and governance funds management, which will empower succession planning for SMEs, initially in financial services, and through them other SMEs that are looking for advice in terms of their growth and succession strategies. What we're doing, therefore, is setting a prima facie standard of mutual DIY research and mentor programming, which we are curating through the peer-to-peer portal and app development and mediation governance that we've developed around CRC Mutual, and which we've contracted with the university to develop. That will obviously be investigated through the universities. We hope to move to a second phase with further research and other university involvements going forward, and ultimately to be able to take that to consumer watchdogs and demonstrate that it is ultimate consumer centricity, which they can validate. That's about it, I believe. That's
excellent, Ross. Well done. Thank you very much. We'll quickly move on. Warwick's going to come back and present on cold blocks.
Yeah, thanks again, Charles. Look, fantastic projects already that you can see, with and the diversity that has been shown. Cobalt blocks is a project that we're really only providing the technical and design support for. It's a South African initiative, and the drivers behind that in South Africa, unfortunately, are hampered by electricity supply situation at the moment. So I'll try to do justice to the project. This project uses our infrastructure to register property assets to the blockchain, and then uses the multi-sig infrastructure that I described earlier to manage and govern the investment pool that enables people to purchase and invest in the fractionalized ownership infrastructure that will support the growth of this property portfolio. The property portfolio already includes 5 rental properties in South Africa, and the project itself will be formally launched in the 3rd week of January, where South African investors will be able to participate in the ownership of these 5 properties and generate rental returns. The objective of this project is twofold. Firstly, to enable more people to begin to build a property portfolio in South Africa as part of their own personal wealth development initiatives. And secondly, to be able to harness community resources to acquire and or develop more properties that will support the housing requirements of communities there as well. So it has a significant social impact dimension at a macro level, and also a personal wealth development potential impact at an individual level. So that's where the project's at. About the 18th of January or thereabouts will be the formal launch. And I think you'll start to see some very interesting and exciting things coming out of that particular project as the leading property fractionalization initiative on the entire African continent.
This is Wine Ledger. So Wine Ledger's one of the projects that very close to my heart as being a big wine fan. What I will say, we've managed to secure, and I think this is key to all of the projects. Each of these projects you're hearing about today has a leader that is driving the project, because the technology is great. We're very proud of the technology we've developed. Without a leader to champion this project, they're unlikely to succeed. They're unlikely to get adopted. And in Jeff Gradwell in South Africa, we've secured a champion to drive our project, and they're doing a fantastic job. They recently attended Cape Wine 2022, which is a huge event in Africa. The traction they've gained there has been outstanding, not only from individual wineries wanting to adopt the technology, but also from regions being able to see the value in being able to brand themselves within a region. It's been really encouraging to see how identifying the right person to drive a project really makes the whole process much smoother and gets the products that we're helping them develop get to market and become commercial very quickly. So from my point, congratulations to Wine Ledger. You really are leading the way in the space globally, and we're very proud to be associated with them. Next up, we have Arnold Chetty, who is going to talk to us about Tuna Ledger.
Okay, thank you, Charles. Tuna Ledger is very much the same as Beef Ledger. The intention there is to track and trace tuna products from provenance to plate. And what we have been hoping to do is provide asset and activity authentication for the production and movement of finished tuna products from the ocean through to processing and packing onwards. We also hope to support the authentication of assets and activities in the movement of harvested tuna, and ultimately its integration into a growing suite of Internet of Things systems, pre and post processing. But Tuna Ledger has another global mission. This is to tackle the tuna fishing of distant water fishing nations and the alarming rate at which this activity is growing, creating sustainability issues, and which has brought about this huge problem called illegal, unreported, and unregulated tuna fishing. To put this into perspective, the FAO estimates that the loss of this valuable source of protein in 2018 was 11 to 26 million tons of fish with a value of approximately 10 to 23 billion lost through IUU. So this issue is very, very big for us. Now, if we manage to introduce this across a lot of jurisdictions, Tuna Ledger will give us the ability to address the concerns of fishers, regulators, processors, lobbyists, and consumers. Because ultimately, our value proposition will be recognized through the result in a higher value product for the boat owners, especially in the face of diminishing resources and increased calls for quotas to be a norm in the future. Adherence to social, environmental, social governance is another objective. And finally, we will hope that through Tuna Ledger, ultimately, when accepted by authorities around the world, it will prevent IUU fish tuna from entering markets and economies. Now, where we are at the moment is that we have started the case study with the Seychelles, where I have a lot of knowledge and contact with authorities, fishers, and processors and independent surveyors. And we've had extensive talk, and we hope that in 2023, first quarter, we are able to start some random trials, and we've already got a presentation ready, and we're about to put it on the table next week, and hope that our idea and concept gets traction, and we make progress from then. We are engaged with with a very important group worldwide, the Thai Union, and they control 30% of the seafood production in the world, and we are talking to them at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Arnold. Very comprehensive as always. Next up, we have Russell Bateman, who's going to talk to us about prebiotic.
Thank you, Charles, and thank you, everybody. Okay. The prebiotic use case is very much an archetypal blockchain use case. This is all about provenance. Tinjoy Biotech actually is one of the very few designers and manufacturers of sophisticated health supplements in the world. Most of the health supplements that appear on pharmacy shelves, online, etc., are contract manufactured and are relatively generic. Tinjoy has invested huge amounts of money to produce a very bespoke product. The problem is it's very easy to look as though you have that provenance. By hooking into the Smart Trade Network's blockchain, we're able to map out the entire value chain and the provenance of our product. That's quite unique because we own the land, we own the production facility, we own absolutely the entire value chain of production. But to most consumers, that's entirely invisible, and it doesn't help us in a competitive market space. So by being able to allow a consumer to see exactly where this base product came from, exactly the production process, exactly the packaging process, exactly the distribution process, what we're setting out is proof that we have a high value product. these products are expensive. So by being able to justify that expense through demonstrating provenance, we believe that we are able to establish for ourselves a competitive advantage, or at least as a relatively small company, to diminish the competitive disadvantage that we have against multi-billion-dollar companies. So STN has been quite a revelation for us. And as far as we're aware, we're the first company in the supplement space to actually do this. Thanks, Charles.
Thanks, Russell. That's great information there. Anybody who's got any interest in any of these projects we're talking about today, feel free to reach out to myself or Warwick, and we'll happily put you in contact with the project proponents. As you heard me say earlier, wine is something close to my heart. This one is too. Chocolate comes a close second to wine for me. This company on the screen now, Liberty Post, is an American-owned, American-registered business. It's got a unique status in America. It's what's called a minority-owned company. What that means is it has some advantages in trading. There's a reason for big companies to transact with it. They have directives and incentives to do so. We can expand more on that if this is interest to anybody looking to get into the North American market with a product. The company there is quite uniquely positioned. All of the products that it puts forward have been registered on the blockchain. So there's always a high level of credibility about the products that it presents. And there's a great team on the ground, both in North and South America, that's there to help producers get their products promoted and launched into that North American market space. Its main focus is on agricultural products, but also wines and spirits and a range of artisan goods. For example, the Ecuadorian chocolate that you can see on the screen. I think probably that's, without going into too much detail, I'd like to expand on that fully with people if this is of interest. I'm mindful of our time as well. So I'll move on to my bios, which Patrick will talk to us about.
Hi, everyone. Patrick here. As Warwick mentioned in the introduction, health of people is one of the domains that we want to enter. Not too long ago, we found out that there is a possibility that we put the STN blockchain technologies into something which is very meaningful. And together with some other strategic partners, we are now secure 3 key technologies for these projects. One is what we call biosignal sensing technologies, which has been deployed and used in the product that you are seeing on the right-hand side of the slide. The other technologies is blockchain technologies. I will explain to you later on why we need to deploy blockchain technologies into these little systems. And the last bit, which is very important in the future, is the AI technologies, which will be very useful for other purpose. Now, at the moment, what we see and what we have developed is a earpieces, as shown on the screen, a single earpieces. In the earbud, it has integrated probably the world's smallest sensing technologies embedded in the earbud. When it is being used through the ear canal, it detects the biosignal automatically. Now, to make it simple, we also develop a app very user friendly apps or shown on the screen on the phone. There are already two available apps in the stores. One is the iOS version, one is the Android version. So basically, this system is for personal use. Now, we can extend this to other collective use. For instance, we know that at the moment China is now open up further, so the number of people who suffer from this COVID symptoms increase drastically. If this system is now being used to as part of the triage system, it will eliminate a number of queuing time, or it can also be useful for health takers to do the first contact examination of the individuals. Now, I'm leading this project from this end because the other strategic partner is located in Hong Kong, but STN blockchain technologies will be another important element to move the project further. Now, the solution itself is very simple. It is a earpiece, no need for education, user educations. The app is also very handy, just normal Bluetooth connections, connectivities features. Now, on the market perspective, I think probably you realize that the CAGR is surprisingly high in this case. Now, we understand that in the future, especially in the next 10 years, the healthcare market with these IoT enabling functions will be exponentially increased. Perhaps that's the result of the COVID pandemic issues that people suffer in the last 3 years. Okay, now, as per today, this project is ready to scale. And if anyone or any sort of related person or parties who are interested, who could come to me or Charles, then we will be able to address anything that suit the local conditions. Charles?
That's great. Thank you, Patrick. And I'll hand you back to Warwick, who's going to take us through our roadmap and collaboration models.
Well, thanks again, everybody. Look, this past 12 months, 18 months or so, working with all of these projects across the world has really been one of the most pleasurable parts of being COVID stuck, if you will, because notwithstanding the fact that we've all struggled to travel physically, we've nonetheless been able to progress many of these projects in very significant ways. And I guess we're thankful for technology to enable us to do that. What I want to do to bookend today's briefing before we get into some discussions is just go through with you all some of our technology roadmaps in terms of what we've got coming up, in addition to the projects that have been showcased, the models by which we're engaging with partners around the world, which may be applicable to yourselves, and ultimately what some of our commercial strategies are, if you will, from a group point of view. From a technology point of view, we're literally rolling out a very tight group of additional features and functions. The next piece to come off the production line, if you will, is a digital marketplace, which enables us to migrate from e-commerce 2.0, which is where the world is at today, towards e-commerce 3.0. And we do that by bridging the Web 2 and the Web 3 worlds. So keep an eye out for that over the next few months as we bring that out, firstly for user testing and then ultimately for full implementation. As part of that, and as Charles mentioned earlier, the digitalization of assets through tracking and tracing will enable us to open up new products and applications around financial services. For many of us, our backgrounds was in cross-border finance and supply chain finance, and in many regards, the ability to digitalize assets enables us to integrate what we're doing on blockchain technologies, physical supply chains, with the ability to streamline the financing of these supply chains. And we're going to do that by enabling all sorts of financialized models on the basis of digitalized assets. We're working very closely with an Australian-based company out of Sydney called Vault ID on integrating their eKYC capabilities with our Web3 environment. Quite clearly, there is a need globally for competent and credible identity verification of actors within these sorts of ecosystems. The challenges and problems that have arisen in recent years around many of these digitalized financial environments have largely been related to the absence, if you will, of functional and effective KYC. We'll be bringing that KYC capability into this ecosystem to support all projects that are being built within this. So no matter what your project is, you'll be able to take full advantage of the KYC functionality that will be rolled out. So once again, the design philosophy is to provide wholesale infrastructure that can be private labeled, if you will, for particular applications. As Kangal went through earlier, document verification is an important part of what we're doing. And from education, I think we'll be moving into a few of the other spaces as well. The multi-sig will support membership-based governance solutions, and that will dovetail in with tokenized reward systems. A number of projects we're working with in regional Australia with travel and tourism organisations and entrepreneurs is very much focused around the ability to tokenize rewards and to encourage repeat visitations and ultimately, I guess, what in old mutual terminology you'd call volume rebates. As part of our marketplace rollout, we'll also be introducing a review and rewards function. And the aim of that is to acknowledge the data feedback loops that people provide when they do write reviews and comments about merchants and suppliers and products. So it's to recognize that value. But in the process, we're able to ensure that the reviews themselves are authenticated. One of the problems that we've seen in the explosion of e-commerce and the importance of consumer reviews is, of course, fake reviews and manipulated reviews, if you will, that have caused a whole raft of problems for merchants and suppliers. And through the use of blockchain technologies, we're able to overcome many of those. So that's really the foundational pieces of our technology roadmap going forward. We work with people really in 8 different ways, and all of these methods have come into play over the last few years. And I hope that by thinking about these 8 different core models, you'll be able to see opportunities for yourself. Obviously, we work with people who are in many ways old-fashioned clients with our blockchain services and our asset digitalization services. We're also building a global network of distribution partners who are making use of our technologies to grow their own businesses in supply chain validation. We have, as we've described, a number of what we call national companies, which are joint venture companies in other parts of the world, and we'd certainly be open to discussing how organisations in other parts of the world could see benefit in building deeper collaborative relationships with smart trade networks to take our technologies in the market and to grow value together. We also work closely, as I think it's obvious, with university researchers in designing new products, tackling difficult problems and exploring applications in new environments. And we have an extensive experience in that. We have some fantastic models, I think, to work with university researchers. So if there are researchers out there who are interested in working with us to pursue research grants and those sorts of things, feel free to reach out, because I think that we can bring something to the table that will fast track a research application to success. We're now encouraging partners to bring their own project ideas to the table. So many of the ideas that we've worked on over the last few years have very much come from within our stable. But as you've seen from the showcases, increasingly the projects that are making use of our infrastructure are actually emanating from other organisations and individuals. Sometimes that involves simply making use of our smart contract suite and our technical infrastructure. Other times it will involve building new applications that makes use of that ecosystem as well. But again, we're open now to working with software developers, product developers, and other entrepreneurs who want to make use of a specialist blockchain ecosystem to advance the value propositions that they want to take to market that are built around the idea of data integrity. So again, it's bringing back our core mission and aligning that with the ambitions and entrepreneurial flair and imaginative capabilities of others. Increasingly, we're also playing a greater role in organisational training and capacity development. And if there are organisations who want to learn more about how Web3 and blockchains can be deployed within their ecosystems, whether it's a regulatory environment, or whether it's a commercial environment or a not-for-profit environment, the research and development work that we've done together with our team of global experts in many, many different domains, whether it's legal, whether it's technical, whether it's social, applied, data analytics, information science, and all those things, feel free to reach out. I think we have within our network and within our organisation as a whole, some of the world's leading researchers and thinkers in this environment. And I have no doubt that the time and resources and effort and money that you'd spend with us would fast track your own organisation on the journey that you're planning to make as far as taking advantage of Web3 in the 21st century. We're also working now towards a strategic investment placement, and that is to enable us to further expand our footprint globally, and I'll touch on that briefly in the next slide. And perhaps one of the most interesting things that we are now starting to engage with parties around the world on is how we private label this infrastructure. So a wholesale infrastructure has now been developed, and we're exploring ways in which we can take that foundational set of tools and provide it with some customizations that will suit the needs and requirements of particular clients and their own social and supply chain community ecosystems. So across all of these 8 different models of engagement, I think we have the ways and means by which the investments we've made in technologies and the know-hows that we've developed over the years can be brought to the table to integrate with the thinking that others have to fast track value creation and to do it in a very simple and standardized way, if you will. So feel free to reach out if any of these 8 boxes, in a sense, fits your requirements. The last thing I'll go through with you is literally roughly where we're targeting to head. We've now reached a point where we've got a number of corporate organisations around the world, and we are progressing down the pathways of a housekeeping tidy up to start with, which we call a consolidation. And we're going to consolidate that around our Hong Kong registered company. And that is to provide really some administrative clarity and also an alignment of incentives across the global operations. Once we've done that, we'll be moving into a strategic investment round where we'll be inviting strategic investment partners and seeking strategic investment partners to come on board with an investment of in the order of $2 million US. Now, that doesn't have to be one investor. In fact, it is more than likely to be a number of strategic partners who can bring not just working capital to the table, but a range of other competencies and values to this particular project. This is all built on really 5 core propositions, if you will. One is a consolidated capital structure. So it's all about clarity. The second one is clarity in IP ownership, so that it's clear where those rights sit and where the value ultimately is anchored. We have clear models of collaboration, and we also have commercialization partnerships and models that are well in train and which are already activating. The final target of all of this is a liquidity event in about 18 months' time. And that liquidity event aims to capitalize on this next phase of growth to get us to a position where we can move from a target of $20 to $25 million EBIT over the global operations to the stratosphere, which is another level altogether. And that's where we're starting to head now, having built the foundations technically, having built the collaborative fabric across the globe. We're now moving into the next phase of commercialization and growth. I might leave it at that, and I'm going to hand it back to Charles to curate the Q&A. If there are any comments, questions, obviously this is an opportunity to pose them. And if we don't have enough time to address them all today, we can always follow them up offline, if you will. So thanks again for your attendance and for your patience. I know we've provided you with a very, very significant amount of information, but this is the first time for probably 2 years that we've actually pulled something like this together, and I hope you found it valuable.
Thanks again, Warwick. That's a great summary of all what's going on. I'll just open the floor to any questions. One second.
Yeah, we might just, yeah, good question, John. Yes, the IP resides in the Australian registered company. So SCP Capital is the IP holder and is the R&D driver of the ecosystem. The Hong Kong company is really an operations company from a commercialization point of view. Dividing these two functions up enables us to better manage risk so that the IP is quarantined and held in a safe environment. A pleasure, John. Okay, move along. All right, let's see how we go. The marketplace, yeah, Curtis. The marketplace is a combination of a Web 2 into Web 3. One of the challenges we found with a lot of the discussion around Web 3 is really enabling organisations to onboard into a Web 3 enabled environment. And that means being able to make payments through Web 3 wallets and those sorts of things. So the next steps in what we're doing really is to bring product and supply chain and workflow credentialing, if you will, to the products that are listed in a marketplace environment, but still enable people to choose how they transact. So the first transaction mode obviously is what you call business as usual, transacting through traditional payment mechanisms. But we will begin to offer the ability for individuals and organisations to choose to transact using Web3 capabilities. And we've developed the wallet functionalities already, which enable that to happen. We've also developed the first version, and early next year we'll be building that out and consolidating and testing and making more robust what we call our escrow deal room functionality. So the escrow deal room is, in a sense, what it says it is. It's an escrow peer-to-peer transaction smart contract. Typically, transactions on blockchains are instantaneous. The escrow functionality enables transactions to be created where the buy side and the sell side can be separated through time as well. So we're able to enable deal making to be done, if you will, but at the same time enable the parties to the exchange to have transparency to the capabilities of the other side. So from the sell side point of view, they want to know that the buyer is good for the money, because that's one of the big problems in cross-border payments, particularly. And on the buy side of the equation, you want to know that what you're buying is legitimately what it's meant to be. And the escrow deal room enables that transparency to exist whilst the deal is being consummated. So that's how the marketplace is going to work. The marketplace infrastructure will support global and local marketplaces. So as Charles mentioned, in the North American context, the Liberty Post business will be delivering and developing the marketplace around a whole range of credentialed products, initially from South America into North America, but also North American markets for the North American market. And then from there, also acting as a pathway for merchants and suppliers within our global ecosystem to take products from other parts of the world into the North American market. So that's the second part. The third part really goes to the marketing initiatives. That will be driven very much locally to start with, and that'll be supported by the particular national companies, if you will, and the supply chain and merchant partners. I'm just reading through the questions now. In terms of marketing, anyone with some great ideas on market initiatives, feel free to reach out. I think as researchers, developers, and product makers, one of the things that we have been probably less focused on until now is the ways in which we engage and communicate with partners. Part of, I guess, what we've done is focus very much on the human-to-human relationships in supply chain. So even though the technology enables us to transact almost as strangers, building out the trust relationships in supply chains has really been a human-to-human effort. And the distribution partners in particular that we're working with now in different parts of the world are now starting to exploit, I guess, what we would call their own social capital, their own networks, if you will, to bring those networks into this broader ecosystem, but at the same time respecting the fact that it is someone else who's bringing their capability and resources to the table. STN5. Look, STN5 was and remains one of our early regulated digitalized financial instruments. And it was a relatively small initiative focused on the design and implementation of digitalized units in a unit trust with an asset backing to the pool. Happy to take that a little bit more offline. There's some technical elements to that. There's also an academic paper that we've had reviewed, and hopefully that will come out in 2023, which will go through many of the issues, opportunities and challenges that we've been able to learn through that particular instrument and the market for that instrument. There are a lot of fantastic learnings from how we've been able to use blockchain technologies to streamline how we can manage who owns what. So it's essentially a registry system, whilst at the same time there are some very interesting issues and challenges around how to connect the digital fungible instruments with the digital twins, if you will, that essentially back those tradable assets. The use case for the products, I'll go to carbon first. Yep, look, carbon's a very interesting case, and we've done 3 proof of concept projects with partners so far. Carbon's certainly not an area that we have built in-house capabilities in, but we'd much rather work with people who are experts in their field. One project was in the verification of carbon credit claims in the beef cattle production supply chain, where our role simply was to enable a digital carbon abatement certificate to be created that had its own provenance history that could be traced and tracked. So that was really about validating the claims that were being made, or at least ensuring that those making the claims were accountable for the claims that they were making about the attributes of a carbon certificate. I think that there is a very significant need and an opportunity in the carbon space. So on top of that project, we've explored some opportunities, and we've worked with some people in the Philippines on designing approaches to carbon markets from the world of coconut production. We're also working again with some researchers on a project application with the Commonwealth Government at the moment on the development of carbon documentation and data collection standards integrated into distributed technologies, distributed ledger technologies, so that we can actually overcome some of the problems that have plagued the protocols that have applied over the last 20 years in the ability for corporations to meaningfully and accurately report their carbon footprint impacts. There's some way to go in that, but it's definitely an area that we want to get involved in. Use cases. Look, I think probably we didn't touch on beef so much because in many ways beef was our starting point, and we'd be more than happy to go into the beef, Gary, in the future, and again, go into that in some detail offline. We actually delivered our first shipments of blockchain tracked beef from Australia into China in early 2019. Forgive me on years now. I mean, this last 3 years feels like 1 year sometimes, and sometimes it feels like 10 years. I can't remember exactly which year it was, but we delivered that first shipment. Actually, I think it was in early 2019.
It was 2019.
Oh, was it? There you go. And we've also tracked and delivered product from Argentina into the China market as well. So that's probably a couple of very tangible historical and ongoing application cases. The Argentinian or South American product has also been tracked from South America to North America. So we can go into some of those details with you as well. I think they're all the typed in questions. Yeah, anything else? Otherwise, I think we're going to...
Warwick, it's John. I did type a question, and maybe I've missed it, but just the different revenue models that you've got on the different applications, is it quite variable in terms of what you're doing? Obviously it is, but can you give a bit of an insight into that?
Yeah, look, so in terms of the tools that Charles went through, blockchain as a service, if you will, or asset digitalization as a service, the revenue models are very simple. It's essentially a subscription basis with modest per unit charging. So that's a very simple one, typically on the basis of quarterly cycles. The marketplace, when we roll that out, will be focused mainly around marketplace transaction fees. So very much around sharing value growth with our merchant partners, as opposed to a traditional, take the money and just say, well, you're on your own kind of approach. We're very much committed to growing markets with our merchant and producer partners. So they're the two main drivers, if you will. As we go into some of the other value-added services, such as in supply chain finance and also in supply chain insurance and that sort of stuff, the typical models are going to look like, in the insurance space, for example, brokerage type of models, and in the finance space will largely revolve around margin sharing, particularly on savings to both investors and also to borrowers. So there's some different models depending on the product, if you will. In terms of your tracking and tracing product, very, very simple subscriptions and per unit charge. When we move that into a trading environment, it is based on a performance or a value share model. And then when we move into financial services, much more around margin sharing.
Great, thanks for that.
Okay, there's one more message in here. Just let me see. Oh, Frank. Frank says he has to go. Absolute pleasure. That's not a question. With this Zoom call, I've scheduled it to end in about a minute's time, and I don't know whether Zoom just automatically ends it or not. So what I'm going to suggest is, just in case it does, we do draw a line on today's event here and now. There's contact details. Most of you know how to get hold of myself, Charles, and other members of the project team and our project ecosystem. So feel free to reach out. The deck will be made available to everybody who's registered, and that's obviously got some contact details and some links to resources. And thanks, Kangol, for dropping in your link. I've actually already mentioned you on LinkedIn with a post during the event. So anybody who wants to reach out to Kangol, feel free to do so. Kangol's on the west coast of the US. but seems to sleep at about 3 hours a night. So I think you can almost get him at any time. So look, thank you very much for attending today's briefing. Looking forward to growing our work together over the next 12 months and 18 months. And, you know, any ideas that you want to bring forward and make use of our infrastructure, feel free to do so. Thanks very much.